Presidential preference primary is less than a month away, and ballots will soon be mailed out to get ready for this upcoming primary election, as well as the June primary and the general election. Nevada state leaders provided some new updates about voting safety and security. Nevada Secretary of State Cisco Aguilar and Nevada Attorney General Aaron Ford led the meeting. They talked about the biggest concerns being the safety of voters and poll workers, as well as the integrity of the vote. Secretary Aguilar says his office has been flooded with integrity violation reports in recent years. He says before the 2020 election, they would receive a couple dozen complaints, and during the 2022 election cycle, they have received nearly 700 complaints. Some are still being investigated, but most of them were deemed unfounded.
There are any number of reasons this can happen, from a lack of understanding of the law, to an attempt to overwhelm our office with unfounded allegations. Regardless, we will investigate each report to the best of our ability and to make sure that our elections are secure.
The Secretary of State says these investigations are conducted by civil and criminal investigators. With the high number of integrity violation reports, there will now be 2 civil investigators and 1 criminal investigator dedicated solely to elections operations. There is also an election integrity task force made up of members from different state and local law enforcement agencies to protect voters, poll workers, and access to ballot boxes.